Hi, last time we went over how to design a creature for a video game using shapes, colors, and mixing the two to create an effective design that reflects the creature's qualities. This time around, I'm going to be focusing specifically on the process that takes us from a simple concept art to actually getting down a final asset design for the game and also animating it as a game asset. Concept art. Initially, we had to figure out exactly what it is we need for the game. In our case, we needed some kind of a cow-like creature that was meant to be cute and fluffy, with a need to portray a bit more of a cozy and a house pet vibe to it, more than a regular cow. And we had to fit our design within our game's world and aesthetic. That means we need to stick to our specific art style that will fit our current environment, and flow with the rest of the game so it won't clash and look out of place. The best way to do that is to take a look at our game's pre-existing assets and concept art to see what exactly we have to work with. Taking a look at our previous creature, the Pluff, and the coop he lives in, we can tell that we are going for a more cute and realistic look. And when we look at our environment, we can tell that our game has a bit more of a blue tone to it. So what we will be looking for is a more warm color scheme. A warmer color scheme will let us pop out our creature from the background, the same way it does for the Pluff, creating a division from the game's background to the interactable game objects. In-game concept. After we drew our concept art, we need to start creating the actual asset to see how it will mesh with the game visually. There are multiple ways I like to make sure the asset will mesh with the game. First, I'll go ahead and draw the creature initially with the background of a screenshot from the game. That way, I'll be able to tell if it feels off or not. Then, using the same method, I'll be able to also check my creature to the background. For example, if you give your creature more contrast and have it be lighter or darker value from the background, it will create some sort of divide, making it pop out more. I also make sure to include having two different game objects to keep the size of the creature relative to the world. In my case, I took a player character and a Pluff, so I know that the creature should be wider than a player, but shorter in height while also being bigger than a Pluff, which is some sort of a chicken creature. Problems. After you start setting in your concept art into an actual proof of concept, you are more than likely going to run into a couple of problems. Mine was the snout. The concept had a cow-like snout that looked a bit dog-like. However, that didn't really translate that well into pixel art and made it look a bit more like a fur coloration. So instead, I decided to go with something that looks better in-game instead of rigorously following the concept art, since I always have to take into account the type of art style I'm working with. Going the opposite route, I went ahead and gave it a small dog-like snout to keep the dog sheep-like vibe it started to receive. And the second problem I ran into was the face shape. Due to our pixel art resolution, we didn't have enough pixels to portray the exact face shape I wanted to go for initially. Instead, I preferred to go the opposite direction and make it rounder. That way, it might have came out a bit more sheepy, but the round shape language added to its cuteness. I already knew from the beginning that I will be drawing a cow-like creature, so I didn't need to think about this part too hard in the initial concept art stage. However, it is very important to always think about what sort of thing does your creature needs to be able to do when you draw it. Meaning, if it needs to fly, it might be vital to give it some sort of flying physical ability, or at least have some kind of jetpack. That being said, there is more to it when it comes to a game asset. For example, I needed my creature to be able to perform these following actions: eat, having an eat cycle, drink, fall asleep, sleep cycle, walk, and idle. But I also had to think about how each of these actions will look aesthetically, meaning if a Moonicorn, our creature, eats, sleeps, or drinks while looking up, away from the camera, as our game is top-down, it will just look like a brown blob that just wiggles its tails or ears. Barely anything is clear to the player. And even though that would be the realistic choice to go with, it doesn't mean that we can choose appealism over realism in a game. So I went ahead and tried to figure out what angles I can use for each actions of the Moonicorn that also looks aesthetically clear and pleasing. I ended up with eat, drink, sleep, and fall asleep to be only usable on a Moonicorn that looks to the side or down to the camera, while walking and idling was important to have for all directions. Animating. So I had to look at different resources such as how a cow walks. Apparently, there is a circular motion from the front legs that goes from inwards to outwards. And to help accentuate the walk, I copied the way horses walk by lowering and raising the head as the Moonicorn walked in rhythm to the hip, making it look more lively and a bit more heavy. And it's worth mentioning I saved a lot of time by reusing certain frames, such as the fall asleep and drink have the same initial frames. I do this recycling of frames and different animations. Recycling frames both shaves off a lot of time and helps to add some consistency to the motion in the creature. Variation. You might have noticed that in the initial concept art, the Moonicorn had sort of a brown and white spotted pattern to it. Well, just like real cows, we wanted to add a few different patterns that can be used on a Moonicorn, alongside a different curated set of palettes. We chose to go for a spotted variant just like in the concept art, a solid one as we worked on so far, and a belted variant just like the Oreo cow. Oh, and we also added a mystery variant, but that's for much later. Now, just as we initially did with the game concept art, we have to try and see how each variant fits and looks. With tweaks and small changes between them, we ended up coming with 4 different variants that we needed to animate. And oh boy, animating complicated patterns over 133 frames took some time. I had to make sure that the lighting moves with the muscles of the legs and also fits the stretching of the fur, while the movement also has to be clear and not obscure the motion. In the end, we got this. 3 cute Moonicorns with different patterns. They will of course also have different color combinations as I curate palettes that fits with our game's color scheme as well. And that's pretty much how I turn a concept art into an in-game asset. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing.